Hello and welcome to this Moneycontrol live stream. I'm Nandita Khemka. Well, I'm here to talk about the resurgence of FAANG stocks, stocks that have seen a massive sell-off in 2022 amid a high interest rate environment and slowdown fears in the US economy. Things seem to be turning around for these FAANG stocks given the kind of performance they've handed in the quarter gone by. It's largely in contrast with what Indian IT firms have done this quarter. In fact, most of them have seen a washout quarter in the wake of slowdown fears uh, slower spends when it comes to their global clients. And of course, the Fed warming up to a pause in the interest rate hike cycle is boding well for these FANG stocks as well. Let's put into perspective what the outlook is looking like for these FANG stocks going forward and whether or not this is the right time to invest in some of these. Well, joining me now is Vikas Gupta, who's the CEO and Chief Investment Strategist at Omniscience Capital. Well, good morning, Vikas. Good to have you joining us this morning. First of all, let me come to you about, what you think about the prospects of when it comes to some of these FANG stocks, given the kind of earnings they have handed in. Last year, hedge funds were unwinding their positions on the back of earnings jitters, and a lot of these funds had written off, the kind of rally that we had seen in FANG stocks. Do you think it's too premature to say that the FANG era has come to an end? In fact, do you think this is a resurgence when it comes to some of these FANG stocks?
Yeah, in fact, even last year when it was going down or it was at the bottom, let's say, we were quite positive on the FANG stocks. Okay,
Hmm.
and there is a reason. We don't focus too much on the stock prices. What is the action? But if you look at inside what these companies are basically in the whole ecosystem which is evolving, the digital ecosystem or the technological ecosystem which is evolving, which is the future of the global economy. You will see that these stocks are at the center of it. They are absolutely what is called the keystone species in this digital ecosystem. Okay, so that gives them very strong moats and very strong persistent competitive advantages. And this is just the beginning. I mean, this is what we are talking is what we are actually seeing till now historically. Going forward, they are getting even stronger moats because of
Hmm.
things like artificial intelligence and 5G coming in. That is creating a lot of new moats which these companies are at the center of. Okay, so I mean, trying to react to quarterly earnings, etc., or growth rates, or even annual, is
Hmm.
absolutely meaningless in these companies, and whoever is doing that is making a huge mistake. Okay,
Right.
yeah.
Do you think, would you say there's a lot of excitement brewing also on hopes that the Fed will, is actually near the end of a rate hike cycle? We saw Fed chairperson Jerome Powell indicating that, June could see a pause when it comes to interest rate hikes. Could this be a precursor to a new leg of rally when it comes to these mega cap stocks?
Yeah, so we can look at like 1 year back when
Hmm.
when from March 22 Fed started hiking, and we know what happened to the markets, right? So as they hiked by around 4 to 5% within less than 12 months, you saw the markets go down by, S&P 500 was down by around 20%, and Nasdaq was down by about 30%. Okay, so naturally now that it's at a pause, I mean that's what Powell indicated. Even this particular hike was probably just like they were in momentum and they wanted to do it. There's no reason, and now it's a pause, and most likely very quickly, maybe in the next couple of meetings itself, they could start reversing the hikes, right? So naturally,
Hmm.
when they were hiking, if you saw the markets go down, it is natural to expect a reverse kind of a reaction when you start cutting rates. Then the markets should most likely get an uplift from that. That's a logical and a mathematical conclusion you can make.
Right. When we talk about these FANG stocks, FANG companies, rather, we've seen a spate of layoffs where some of these big tech giants are concerned. You talk about Meta, Amazon, Alphabet. I mean, laying off hundreds of thousands of jobs. Coupled with that, big investments lined up in generative AI. So there is no lack of funds, so to say. In fact, companies are actually sitting on huge piles of cash. And with this AI, generative AI wars heating up, do you think now this could be the time to look at some of investing into some of these stocks? Exciting times ahead when it comes to generative AI.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely exciting times as far as generative AI is concerned. And naturally, these stocks are at the heart of it. I mean,
Hmm.
these generative AI kind of models require huge amount of capital investments and expenditure, right? And these are the companies which can do that and which requires huge amount of data. And most of these companies are generating a lot of that captive data and have access to computing capacity to do the
Right.
training on all of that data, and then again they have the computing capacity and money to use it to do inferencing, right? So there is training and there is inferencing, so both are important as far as generative AI is concerned. Now you look at the size of these companies. I mean, the revenues range. I mean, Netflix is the smallest with around $30 billion of revenues, but if you look at something like an Apple or Amazon, they are at around
Hmm.
$500 billion. Okay, so that's huge. Now you take all of this, and the cash flows. Cash flows range from anywhere between 5 billion, $10 billion to on an average 50, 60, and as high as 110 or so. Okay, so these are extremely profitable, extremely large companies, right? I mean, you're having free cash flow larger than majority of the countries in the world, the GDP of these countries, right?
Right.
So
That's
they
true.
didn't need to fire just to survive. The
Hmm.
the reason they laid off a lot of people is they overhired, or they hired the wrong kind of people, or they found an opportunity in this sentiment that there is a recession potentially coming up, or there is a tough environment macroeconomically. They just got an opportunity to exit some of those
Right.
people who were not really contributing. Okay.
And they were hired at great incentives, huge salary pay packets as well as other incentives. So it
Right,
looks
right.
like it did give them an exit opportunity when it comes to employee costs.
Absolutely, absolutely. They just use this opportunity of negative, macroeconomic sentiments to kind of rationalize the workforce. And naturally, see, it was like an arms race when they were hiring, right? Let me
Yes.
just get this guy, otherwise the other fangs are going to get him,
Talent wars.
okay,
Yeah,
or
you're
her.
right.
And so you just hire them, and you had huge HR teams doing this, and so naturally there was mishiring, and now it's an opportunity just to rationalize. So 20, 30,000 each of those companies are trying to lay off, but keep in context that, I mean, Amazon has around 600,000 employees, okay, just for context. And of course the others have much less. I mean, Apple, Amazon would have more, Google, etc., Meta would have much lesser. But post this, they are nearly at the end of the that layoff phase, and so the margins are better. And naturally, everyone got surprised this quarter, right? And people were expecting, because they are talking too negative just to capitalize on what is happening, and they were extremely negative on that. What are their expectations? And so those are beaten now. And going forward, naturally, they are on the next phase of growth. Yeah.
Hmm. Let's talk about this generative AI space in greater details. Microsoft has caused a major disruption with its AI chatbot, Chat GPT. It went viral as soon as it was launched, which also actually led to Google coming out with Bard. Now, of course, it is available to a wider user base, given the kind of user base it was available to when it was first launched. It did get a very lukewarm response. Recently, even Slack has announced a chatbot-like tool for its platform. Where do you expect this entire generative AI? In fact, how do you expect this entire generative AI landscape to pan out going forward?
Yeah, so it's just, I mean, it's not even started, you can say. Okay. It's at an inflection point. Things have not even started happening. Okay. It's just showing off, and they are showing off. Actually, I would say it's an understated show off. The AI companies are actually scared to give out the full extent of what is possible. Okay, that is our opinion. Okay, that is our guess, that they are trying to underplay, because if they actually show the full capabilities, then there could be huge regulatory, backlash,
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of private citizens being concerned about privacy issues or control issues, etc. And then the governments will come in and try to regulate it. So they're trying to just show in bits and pieces that, okay, this is possible. What is actually possible is much, much more. And then applying that, I mean, that's the huge runway, which is probably for like a couple of decades at least. Okay.
Right.
So it's a huge ramp up, and even the technologies. See, right now everyone is just talking about large language model because Chat GPT did that. Okay,
Hmm.
but there are other technologies, and we've not seen what's happening with those technologies.
Right. Let's also talk about Amazon versus Alphabet now. Amazon, of course, dominates the e-commerce industry with strong online sales. Now, it has also trumped Google with respect to ad revenues. It raked in nearly $10 billion in the quarter gone by in ad revenues versus Google, which has reported a slump in revenues for a second straight quarter. And when it comes to web services, they say that obviously customers are evaluating their ways to optimize their cloud spending given the kind of tough economic situation that's prevailing in the US. But do you think in the middle of all this, Amazon is gaining an edge over Alphabet per se, or what is the outlook there?
Yeah, see, so let's distinguish two different markets. One is the
Hmm.
cloud market, right? So cloud is one thing, and where Amazon is the leader, right? They're number one. Microsoft is a close number two, and based on some numbers, maybe Microsoft is number one.
Hmm.
Around at $80 billion kind of annual revenue with extremely high profitability. Okay, so Google is trying to be the number three player, and it's a much distant number three. So it is eating into the market share. Okay, on the cloud side. Now on advertising side, like you rightly pointed out, Google was losing this quarter while Amazon is gaining. But there is a huge difference. Amazon, while it's grabbing market share on a broad market level, like the total digital market ad spend, yes. But if you look at it, it's only doing a captive marketing, right?
Hmm.
Only people who are sellers on Amazon advertise typically on Amazon advertising. That's majority of the thing. So that's like a captive market that you are already listed on Amazon marketplace and you're trying to sell and you want an edge over rest of the sellers. So you give money to Amazon to showcase you at the top. Now, Google, on the other hand, is not having any captive clients who are advertising. It's an open market, right? And there they are number one. And keep in mind that digital is already more than 50% of global total advertising market, including offline, billboards, television, everything put together. Digital is already 50% plus, and Google is the leader in that.
Right.
Okay, and so yes, so it is going to get affected by macro conditions, but no way their advantage is going away on the advertising market. And on cloud they're gaining huge market share, but they're a third distant small player behind Amazon and Microsoft.
Right. I two last questions. First of all, Apple. I want to know your thoughts on that. It's come to be known more as a products company than a tech company, and it has
Sorry,
recently
which one I
opened
missed? I missed, sorry.
Apple. Apple.
Apple, all right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it has opened two new stores in India, and obviously when you saw the quarterly performance on last week, you saw record iPhone sales, even though there was a drop in iMac, I mean laptop sales as well. But
Sure.
given the fact that Warren Buffett also is pretty much bullish on this counter, we saw him make some comments during the Berkshire Hathaway AGM over the weekend. In fact, they could also look at increasing their stake in Apple going forward from the 5.6% that they have right now. Uh, what is your take on that? And aside of that, what about the valuation of these FANG stocks? Have they become very attractive after the kind of correction that they saw in 2022?
Yeah, so I mean, I would just like to say that investing in securities market is subject to market risk, and nothing we are saying is advice. But if you see Meta, I mean, Meta is amazingly cheap. Okay,
Hmm.
it's at a 11 price to cash, something like that. Google is at around 14, 15 kind of price to cash flow, right? And even if you take Amazon, is also at a very nice, probably around 20 kind of a price to cash flow, operating cash flow. Okay, so all of these stocks are in. Let's talk about the other way. cash flow yield, where cash flow divided by the price is how you
Right.
state it. So cash flow
Hmm.
yield is something like 3% to 5%, or even I mean, as I said, Meta is around even 8 to 9%. Okay, so that's a crazy yield. Okay, operating
Hmm.
cash flow yield, and then you think about their growth. So long term, I think they're mid to high single digits at least, and probably double digits. Uh, Now, a typical return, if you want to estimate, you can estimate with the free cash flow yield plus the growth
Hmm.
and plus any re-rating. That's the formula for estimating what kind of return you could get. Okay, and
Right.
I would ask people, audience, to just do it on their own, and they will have the answer to whether it's like a attractive opportunity or not.
Right. So would you say that Meta is your favorite among the FANG stocks?
Yes, on the valuation front, absolutely. Now, if you talk about overall kind of
Hmm.
modes or the kind of advantages or things people are doing, then all of them are our favorites. Okay,
Okay.
each and every single one of them. But on the valuation
Okay.
front, Meta is really juicy, and Google is
Hmm.
really juicy. Yeah,
Right.
but even
For the
Amazon, I
benefit
mean,
of
Amazon, you're not going to see. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm coming to the last question for the benefit of our viewers. If an Indian investor wants to go about investing in some of these international stocks, are there any particular ways to do it, or how do they go about doing it? One last question for the benefit of our viewers.
Sure, sure. So our preferred way of doing it is open an account on one of these international investment platforms. So there is Interactive Brokers, there is Stockle, there is Vested, and there are several others, I would say. So open an account with one of these platforms which offer international brokerage services, and then
Hmm.
you know uh, then you can look at investing in these. But
Right.
that is one way. Of course, there is an Indian ETFs as well, right? You have the Nasdaq ETFs and
Yeah.
S&P 500 ETFs in India itself. And
Right.
since these FANG stocks are very large allocation of these ETFs, right? They're the largest five or largest 10 stocks. Uh, right now, there is an easy way to just buy the ETF and get that exposure. But in the long
Hmm.
term, you would actually have to open an account and buy the stocks directly. But then you have to know what to buy. So we actually don't recommend buying single stocks. We recommend a portfolio approach. Buy a
All right.
portfolio of such companies. If you want AI exposure, buy a portfolio of AI oriented companies. If you want
Right.
US exposure, like full market exposure, or you buy a portfolio of multi cap stocks or something like that. So that's a preferred thing, and never allocate more than 10% to a single stock.
All right. That's very useful. Well, with that, Vikas, thanks a lot for a very interesting and informative session on FANG stocks. And for the benefit of our viewers, these are some of the ways that you can take exposure to some of these FANG stocks as well. With that, Vikas, thanks a lot for joining in. And thanks a lot for joining into the discussion for our viewers. It's a goodbye from me, and stay tuned to Money Control for more news and updates throughout the day.
Bye bye.